Hello and good evening to our live stream audience. We are so thankful to have you ladies joining us tonight for our Women in Blended Families Holiday Edition. We're going to talk about everything related to the holidays, and that's a huge topic. But as we begin to talk about that, I want to give y'all just a few minutes for those who are still jumping on. I would love to hear from some of you that have come on. I'd love to hear where you're from. And maybe if you have snow, we're in the South. We don't see snow very often, other than one of our participants on here does. But if you've joined us, we'd love to see where you're from and just hear from you for a few moments as we continue to let ladies come on. You can also go on there and tag a friend. If you know somebody who might be interested in the content tonight on women and blended families, you can just tag them in the comments so that they will come on. Colorado, very cold, several inches of snow. Oh, wow, I don't doubt that. Portland, Oregon, no snow here, but very cold. Okay. Summerville, South Carolina, I bet y'all don't have snow. California. Hey, Stacy Holsapple, so good to see you from Oregon also. And others, Pittsburgh, I know y'all are cold up there as well. Thank you for telling me where you're from. Warm Panama. Yeah, I know you're warm. Massachusetts, no snow yet. Well, we are so glad to have you guys. We're so glad to see where you're from. There's one from Australia. Thank you for
Yay.
joining us. And we're going to get started, though. We want to capture as much of our time as we can and give you the information that we believe you are looking for as we consider the holiday. So my name is Gayla Grace. I serve on staff with Family Life Blended as a writer and a speaker. My passion to minister to step families grew as a result of my own step family journey. My husband Randy and I have been married 27 years. We have 5 kids in our blended family. We are what some call a his, hers, and ours. I came in with 2 kids. Randy had 2, and we've had 1 child together. Our kids are now 21 to 37, and we are empty nesters, which is a good season, as well as some of the other ladies on here. So let me also introduce you to the 2 ladies that'll be joining me, Lori Romberg McGregor. Lori is in the Dallas area. She and her husband Kirk have been married for 10 years. And Lori and Kirk are affiliate staff with Family Life Blended also. They serve with our team. And when they were married, Lori brought 2 kids, 2 12-year-old twins. Twins is always a little demanding, right, Lori?
Yes, that's
And
for
then,
sure.
yeah, and then Kirk brought 2 kids. And so their 4 kids now range in age from 14 to 22. And Lori's professional position is an OBGYN doctor. So those of us who have had babies are very thankful for obstetricians and the work that they do. So thanks for joining us, Lori. And
Thanks
then
so much for
Cheryl
having me.
Shoemake is also here with us tonight. Cheryl has been married to Jonathan for 14 years, and Cheryl brought a biological daughter. Jonathan brought 2 biological kids and a stepdaughter from a previous marriage. And those kids are now 37 to 23. But Cheryl, I would have to think the best part of your bio is that you're a grandma.
Yes, that's absolutely the best ever. Yes.
Oh, well, congratulations. And I
Thank
know you're just
you.
loving the role that you get to have as a
I
grandma.
am. I was with him today and it's been a blast. Yes.
Oh, that's so fun. Well, as we get started, ladies, and as we begin to talk about all things related to holidays and blended families, I want to say first that we understand the hard of this season. We've all walked it. And there's some complexities that you just can't make easy. And we want to acknowledge that tonight. And we also want to say that in the midst of the hard, we can find joy. And there are ways that we can learn to hold both. We hold the pain and we hold the joy. And those are things that we want to talk about. We want to give you encouragement. We want you to know there is hope if you're feeling in a hopeless situation. We've just come through Thanksgiving. And I don't know about y'all, but our Thanksgiving had some challenges. I mean, it just does. Holidays seem to bring that a little bit more so even in blended families. So, as we prepare to move into the Christmas season, we just want to provide some encouragement and some hope for you. But we're going to start with telling just some funny stories of our own blended families. When I was a young stepmom, it helped me to hear some funny stories from others, some lighthearted stories. It helped me know there is a good side to blended family life on days that I feel overwhelmed. And so we're going to start with that, and then we're going to move on into some things that we would like to provide wisdom and just some nuggets that we think would be helpful. So let's go with that. Cheryl, how about if you start first? What kind of humor
Yeah,
story might you share with us?
sure. So we were sitting around the table one holiday. I can't even say it was Christmas. It might have been Thanksgiving. I'm not sure. But I started talking about this PhD engineering student who loves the Lord and how I need to pray for him to find one of our girls to marry. And all of a sudden, our son, he like puts his phone down. He looks at me. And this is my stepson, by the way. He says, he says, "Why are you guys always looking for someone for the girls? I want a sugar mama. I'm pretty too." We just fell out. He was like, "I am not too macho to wash dishes and stay home with the kids. I will do it. Just send me a sugar mama as well." So we just felt like we were laughing, and I love our table talks. Our table has just been an open place for us to have hard conversations and conversations full of levity and fun and joy. But what it has really done is just created the space where our family can bond and
Hmm.
grow in intimacy as a blended family. So yeah, we love our Thanksgiving talks.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And that's such a fun story to think about that it's not just the girls that are looking for those guys.
No.
So our guys are also looking for a mate. Yeah, I get that. Lori, how about you and your family?
Gosh, we have really had some great times at the holidays. Just this year, we had the opportunity to host my dad and my stepmom for Thanksgiving. That's the first time that we've had them here in our home. So we had multiple generations with
Yeah.
multiple steps, and that was just a really cool opportunity. But we always have a dominoes competition every
Oh,
Thanksgiving, and it gets a little cutthroat. Everybody's just a little bit competitive, especially our youngest, Abby, who has won. We would have gone so far as to create a trophy, and if you win, then you get your name on a placard on the trophy. But she
oh,
won 2020 and 2021, and so she had some serious bragging rights. But
oh.
this year she was dethroned, and our oldest Sarah, um, and Kirk has just brought me the trophy so I could show you. We
Oh, I
Oh,
literally
that's
have
a nice
dominoes.
trophy.
But what's
Oh my
fun is we
goodness.
took all our last names and we smushed them together. So we have three last names in the house between my maiden name, Kirk's name, McGregor, and my two kids. They have their dad's name. So we've smashed them all together and says Prom Burger, annual Thanksgiving Domino's Dominator. And so this
I love
year,
it.
Sarah, our oldest, she'll get her name on the placard. So it's
Well,
just
and
a
you know
fun
what's
thing that we love to do at the holidays, and then it's been even more fun to make it to where you have bragging rights with the trophy.
right. And you know what's fun about that is everybody's on an even playing field. I mean, whether you're a biological child, you're a stepchild,
Hmm.
everybody is in there on their
Yeah.
own, trying to win this domino game, trying to win this trophy that carries on. And I think those are things that help with blended families to help form belonging and
Hmm.
identity, which every blended family needs. So I love that. And I'm curious where that trophy stays in the house.
It stays in the front room where it's on display, right on
Okay,
the
that's what I
bookshelf.
thought.
Yeah. Yeah. So we still need to put the placard on from 21, and now we've got to order one for 22, and then we'll see if we can who's going to win next year. But my
So
parents even tried this year, so
oh, the
they
parents
were.
were allowed to participate.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Anybody who's here for Thanksgiving and can, step or bio, doesn't matter. If
right.
you're family, you're eligible to be the Domino's Dominator.
So
Wow.
It's
we
fun.
throw
It's really fun.
bones. We will be there next Thanksgiving. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
come on, come on. We play Mexican train dominoes and love it.
Yeah, that's great. That is so fun. Well, we also have a story in regards to where you mentioned different last names because it is normal to have different last names in a family. When I remarried, my name changed to Grace, but my two daughters' last name was Newman. And what's funny that we learned though is kids who don't grow up in a blended family, they don't understand why people in your family have different names.
Mhm.
And Randy and I were very active in serving in youth ministry when our kids were younger. And I remember one particular Christmas, we had offered to host the Christmas gathering, the party that the youth was going to participate in. And so, and we know these kids. I mean, we minister to them, they know us, and they come to the door. And one particular, it was a brother sister who Randy answers the door, and I'm right behind him. And one of the kids says, "Hello, Mr. Newman. We're so glad to see you." Well, Mr. Newman is my ex-husband's name. So how do you think that went over with Randy? I mean, it wasn't the first time he had heard it, but this is just an occasion where you're kind of hyped up for the holidays. It's going to be a fun party. But that just triggered him. And he said, "I'm not Mr. Newman. I'll never be Mr. Newman. Don't call me Mr. Newman." And I stepped in and tried to kind of lighten the load a little bit for those kids because they've got this look of shock in their eyes. And I said, "Hey guys, we're a blended family. Y'all probably didn't realize that the girls' names are different than mine and Randy's names, but come on in and let's have a party." But
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
that is something that my daughters will still laugh about today because they know they can get a rise out of Randy if they call him Mr. Newman.
Yeah, it's too funny. So
So,
Kirk sometimes gets Mr. Romberg because I professionally go by my maiden name of Romberg. So he'll sometimes get Mr. Romberg depending on where we are, and he just kind of smiles and
yeah. Well,
just
that's
likes
a
to
little
get.
different than being called by the name of,
Yes, very
Yes.
much so, very much so. I have a
So,
cool one other name story. So my dad and my stepmom have been married for 36 years. So praise Jesus that it's just been an amazing relationship to watch and one that we've, really tried to model in our marriage. But what was really cool is that they took each other's names. So my stepmom had gone back to her maiden name
oh,
also, which is Allen. And then my dad's last name is Romberg. And so they both hyphenated. And
hmm.
so to this day, they're John and Sonny Allen Romberg. So it's been kind of a cool thing. And people are like, "Why does your dad have a hyphenated last name?" I'm like, "Because he took her name and she took his name." And
That is
it's a
very
really cool
unusual.
thing.
Very
It's
Yeah.
very
unique.
unusual.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
that's very unusual. But names can be a big thing in blended families. And I do
Yeah.
think it is something that we need to be sensitive to. I wasn't always sensitive to the fact that, say, that we were out to somewhere to eat, maybe, and I would say, "Okay, Grace kids, here we go." But that wasn't my kid's last name. And so I had to be aware that maybe that felt different for them, for me to just refer to everybody as Grace kids. So names are important. Okay,
Mhm.
but in regards to more holiday related things, I really want us to think about how and what day we celebrate the holiday. I'm even thinking about Christmas this year. It's on Sunday, y'all,
Mhm.
Sunday. And if you have a church service, it seems like what we're celebrating that we should go to church that day. And it does kind of alter the schedule for everybody, in my opinion,
Mhm.
even people who are not in blended families. So for
Mhm.
biological families, maybe it alters the schedule a little bit. But let's talk about, how do y'all manage to schedule kids? All of us are moms and stepmoms, the three of us that are on here. And we have kids that move back and forth from homes, and somehow we do have to figure out how to manage that schedule so that our kids can have Christmas together and it feel like
Mhm.
there's some kind of normalcy. But there's a little strategy that has to go into that sometimes, and planning and flexibility and so many things that we could talk about. But I'd love to hear from you ladies as to, how does it work? Lori, I know with your schedule as a physician, that must impact your schedule some and your
Yes,
holiday.
it definitely does. In fact, so I was a single mom for 7 years, and my kids, we had joint custody. I had joint custody with my former spouse, and so we just worked it out. So the kids basically had two Christmas mornings. We had Christmas with me, and then they would have Christmas with their dad, or sometimes it was the other way around. And really, the way it fell was often dictated by my call schedule and by the calendar, because we
Right.
had, certain days that they would spend at either house. And so we weren't really attached to like, oh my gosh, Christmas has to be on Christmas Day on the 25th. So we held that pretty loosely, knowing that we were celebrating, Santa comes twice to kids who have two houses. We said that for years. I think you really nailed it on the head when you said planning and flexibility. And I'm so thankful to have a good co-parenting relationship with my former spouse, that we were able to maintain that flexibility, and we were able to communicate well and plan it out. We now, Kirk and I have been married 10, coming up to 11 years. Our first Christmas together after we were engaged, but not yet married, was a pretty interesting one. I was on call on Christmas Day, at Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And so I was like, well, that's fine. My kids can have Christmas morning with their dad on the 25th, and we'll do Christmas morning on the 26th. And Kirk was like, what are you talking about? Christmas is on Christmas. Christmas is on the 25th. Like, that's not okay. And we're going to celebrate Christmas on Christmas. And it was an area where we really had to kind of communicate and compromise and be flexible. And he was gracious and said, gosh, I get it. Like, I may not be here on Christmas morning on the 25th. I may be at the hospital catching some babies, which is awesome and a blessing. But like, I want to be able to have Christmas morning when I'm not going to get called away. And so the more we talked it through, the more he's like, okay, that makes sense. And okay. And so we've just maintained that flexibility. We even gave up one Christmas one year so the kids could spend it with their dad and their brothers on his side. Mm-hmm. He has two more younger boys before he was moving out of state. Yeah. So we're just like, go spend the time with him. We'll still be here, but so again, that flexibility and just.
Right. And I do think the important thing for us to remember is it's okay if we don't celebrate on December the 25th.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's really going to work better for a blended family and for the kids to consider what is the best schedule in regards to how we celebrate. Cheryl, I'm curious your thoughts on that too.
Absolutely. I think Lori said something that was so key, and that is communication. Like, she had to sit down and talk with Kirk how important it was for her to be a little bit flexible with her former spouse and also with her own schedule. In our own situation with my biological daughter, we decided, because we didn't have a working relationship, we followed the plan. So that parenting plan is solid gold when you do not have a good working relationship with your former spouse. And so we did not celebrate Christmas until Kayla was home. By the time Jonathan and I were married, my former spouse had passed away, so I didn't have it on one side. She was always with us, and on his side, with his former spouse, she had no attachment to Christmas, and so it was very easy for the kids to come to us that morning and then go over to her house that afternoon, or come to us in the afternoon, or just stay with us all day. So we were able to work it out without a lot of tension. And that was such a blessing.
That is such a blessing. And I think if some of those conversations have to take place away from the ears of the kids, because maybe there is tension at times and our kids don't need to see that. That creates additional stress for them. But you need to start early. And so here we are already, almost December the 1st, and jump on it if you haven't already, in regards to making plans for what that schedule is going to look like. And I always want to talk about grace and how our kids need grace from us at times when, we just need to recognize their plight and how they go back and forth, and it's not fun for them. And so sometimes they might be disagreeable and their attitudes aren't where we want them to be. But it took me a lot of years to realize that they are walking a road that is hard too. It's not just me that's walking a hard road. And so I think that we need to remember that as we work with our kids and help them adjust to new schedules at the holidays. So thanks for sharing those about just how and when we celebrate. And another big thing, in my opinion, in regards to the holidays is traditions. Traditions give us a sense of belonging. They help step families bond and come together and form an identity. If we create some traditions and we do them year after year after year, then our kids begin to feel, oh, this is just part of our family. This is just part of who we are. And I think in the early years, if your kids are old enough to be in the decision making product of what traditions they would like to participate in, I think it's really important to ask them. They may have traditions from another home that they want to keep up with. And we want to be sensitive that we're not trying to compete with the other home, that we are wanting the kids to be able to join in traditions that they enjoy, and those are the things just to consider. Cheryl, I know that I heard you talk one time about doing service together with your kids and how that became traditions. I'd love to hear a little more on that.
Yeah, we had brought a tradition from my former marriage, and then we incorporated some traditions from Jonathan's former marriage, but we wanted to do something that created our own family culture.
Right.
And I am huge on volunteering. And so I just asked the kids, what do you guys think about doing this on Christmas morning? Instead of doing let's opening the gifts and having brunch, let's do something, let's serve. They
Hmm.
were all for it. And we found an organization. We went out and we volunteered, and they asked, actually, can we make this a tradition? Can we do this
Wow.
again? Great. I love the fact that they had the buy-in, and it wasn't
Yes.
something that came from us. It was something
Right.
that they said, this is what we want to do together as a family. And so that's what we started incorporating into our family. We
Mhm.
weren't able to do it, of course, for the last couple of years because we've had COVID, but
Yeah.
hopefully, oh
Right.
my goodness, oh my goodness,
Right.
such a disruptor, right?
Oh, don't get me
But
started.
oh, especially you, right, in the medical
Yeah.
field. But hopefully this year we'll be back at it and able to find a spot to volunteer. So yeah, it's been wonderful, and it's been
Yeah.
very helpful for us.
Those are the things that I feel like kids will remember about Christmas more than
Yeah.
anything, more than what gifts they get, more than any
Mhm.
of what kind of food is on the table. I think that serving together and doing things as a family are things that our kids are going to remember. And those are things that we want to build in. Lori, I'm curious about you and your family with traditions.
So we've had some traditions that, like kind of like Cheryl said, that we brought in that were traditions from my side and traditions from Kirk's side. One tradition we brought in from my side, which I think it's a fairly common one, where we get to open one present on Christmas Eve,
Oh,
and
Yeah, we do that.
so
Yeah.
we're big fans of coating everything by wrapping paper. So each child has a different wrapping paper, so we know, usually nobody gets a bow, nobody gets names on it. That's your paper, that's your paper, that's your
oh,
paper.
that's a
So then
cool
we know.
idea.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it works so beautifully. So, and then one's always this one with Santa's and one's the plaid. And anyway, and then the Christmas Eve ones had a whole separate paper. So we knew exactly which ones. And we're like, okay, you can only open those. And of course, every time it's pajamas. And for a long time, it was matching pajamas. And they'd be like, oh, is it pajamas again? And then they got to where they're like, are we going to open our pajamas yet? We're like, well, we don't know if it's pajamas. I don't know what you're talking about. So we tried to play it off like it was going to be something other than pajamas, but it was always pajamas. From
Wow.
Kirk's side, so that's been really fun. They've looked forward to that a lot. From Kirk's side, his family always had Chinese food for, I believe, Christmas Eve, and so we tried to incorporate that. We enjoy Chinese food. It turns out our kids not so much. So that flopped for a while,
Yeah.
but because then they got to where they would finally eat, and but all they would have is the fried rice. So we're waiting for some taste buds to mature, and we're getting there. So
Yeah. And
we're still going
that
to
is
keep.
that is something else I was going to mention too, is it's okay if you try a tradition and it doesn't work.
And it
And
flops, right?
yeah, it flops. I mean, it sounded like a great idea. Your kids even had a
Yeah,
buy-in for that first year, and then it turned out it really wasn't
they're
such
like,
a great idea.
"Ew."
It's okay to cross that off and
We'll
say,
just
okay,
fortune
let's go.
cookie.
Yeah, let's go back to the drawing board. What other tradition do we want to try? There's just so many things out there that we can
Yeah.
do. I will say, though, that y'all are nicer than I am. I do not allow our kids to open a gift on Christmas Eve. But that was how I grew up. We begged our kids to our parents to let us open a gift on Christmas Eve, and they did not. So isn't it funny how we take on things that our parents did? And we just
Yeah.
can't seem to bend on that.
Well, it was so funny because the
Well,
goal would be like there was ulterior motive because then you would wear those pajamas to bed. And so then when you have pictures the next morning, everybody's in nice new matching pajamas.
Oh,
So
that's
that was
great.
oh,
that
that
was
Yeah.
was
the
great.
purpose of it. We
That
did
was
one
the
other we've done one other fun thing for tradition. Since pretty early on, we have always gone to do the Salvation Army angel tree, and we've picked
Mhm.
out kids on
Mhm,
the angel
Mhm.
tree that were the same
mhm,
age as our kids, and then we had them shopping with us and purchasing the presents for the kids. So that was
Mhm.
really cool. And then
yeah,
assembling it and delivering it, and that's
mhm,
that's been a way for them to give back. So Cheryl, I really like that idea of serving, and so
yeah,
that's how we've kind of incorporated it for us.
Yeah, and
yeah,
I want to talk about a question that's come in because I think this is a pretty common question actually in regards to blended families. But how do we work through our disappointments when plans don't come together? How do we cope when we had expectations that one thing was going to happen and then we had to change our plans? Gosh, I think about even
Mhm.
last year, no, I think it was 2 years ago at Christmas, our son ended up with COVID on New Year's Eve, and he was 20 years old, didn't live in our household. We did not see him for Christmas, and that's a huge disappointment. And we tried to be creative and went to his house and stood on his porch and
Mhm.
sang some Merry Christmas song to him, but that was not the same
No.
as embracing him in our home as we unwrapped gifts. And we postponed all of Christmas to New Year's Eve. And I do think that sometimes we have to get creative.
Mhm.
We have to accept that there are things that do happen that we can't control. And we have to learn how to cope with that. Yeah, Cheryl, what were you going to say?
I was just going to add to that. I was just going to piggyback, in addition to the acceptance that things might happen, is that we need to embrace it's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to
Right.
say,
Right.
I this hurts, or I don't like this, or my expectations were dashed. And I think
Mhm.
once we begin just acknowledging, then
Mhm.
it's easier for us to then begin working through it. So I would say
Absolutely.
acknowledge the
Yes.
disappointment first
And
and
talk
foremost.
Yeah.
yes, talk to somebody about it. Tell
Right.
somebody, "I'm really disappointed that this happened." Don't expect that they can fix it for you because they can't,
Mm-mm.
but they can listen and they can hopefully empathize. Sometimes we have to teach our if we're gonna talk to our partners, sometimes we have to help them know, "Okay, I'm not asking you to fix this. I'm just gonna tell you that I'm disappointed that this didn't happen."
Yeah.
And,
I was just going to say that, Gayla, because I tend to be, I mean, it's what I do professionally. I tend to be a fixer. And so there are
mm,
times when Kirk will say something and I'll be like, and now I have to pause and be like, do you need to do you want me to fix it? Or you want me to just, listen and vent, what do you need from me?
mhm,
Just, and it's been so much easier now that I don't feel like I have to try to fix it because I'll jump in with lots of
right,
solutions. But
right.
really, it's okay, to just kind of sit in that moment. I actually had to ask my daughter's forgiveness the other day because she was feeling frustrated about something, and I was just like, trying to fix it. And she's like, "Mom, I'm frustrated, and it's okay for me to feel frustrated." I'm like,
Right,
"You're
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
right. Mhm.
Please,
Yeah,
will you please forgive me for not letting you, feel those emotions?"
right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was a moment, and she was kind of surprised when I asked her forgiveness, but it was a nice, teachable moment, I guess.
Yeah,
Right.
I think too we need to realize that sometimes it may seem like disappointment, but it may really be grief
Hmm.
that we are struggling with some
Mhm.
grief of the fact that maybe there's some unresolved issues that we haven't completely grieved about. And so as we have said already, just voice it to somebody, a safe person. Be careful who you voice and be vulnerable with. Make sure it
Mhm.
is a safe person. And then sometimes we can train people to help us just acknowledge our feelings, not try to fix us when we're in a place where we just need to talk. So those are great things to consider. And then know that Some Christmases are just better than other Christmases. Some Christmases are harder than other Christmases.
Mhm.
And you come to the end of the season and, maybe you go before the Lord and you just say, it's been a hard season this year. Lord, I need some encouragement. And I pray that you would bring some encouragement to me in one way or another. And I've done that before, and the Lord has done that for me.
And can I add that this is not indicative of a blended thing? This is a people thing
Right,
because it's the
right.
human condition. I
Mhm.
think sometimes because we're talking about being in blended families, that we give a lot of heft to being in a blended family, and really sometimes it's just a people
It's just
thing.
life.
It's
Mhm,
just life.
mhm.
So if we can always in everything, with prayer supplications, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything
Right,
go to God, and he will provide encouragement, he will provide hope. The disappointment this year will turn into a story next
right,
year, or maybe 3 years down the road. So it's a season. It's not the end of your story.
right,
It's a thing that happened in a season.
right. Yes,
Right.
and just continue to persevere and know that there's a very good chance that next year's Christmas will be better as you continue to grow relationships and build strong relationships in your family through communication and all of those things that we've talked about. So, emotions
Mhm.
can be a big deal this time of year, but we don't have to let our emotions dictate how we behave. We don't have to give power to emotions if they control us. We just need to know it's normal to have emotions at sometimes that are overwhelming, or to feel confused or disappointed, or all of these
Mhm.
things are
Mhm.
very normal. And as Cheryl said, it's not just tied to being in a blended family. Some of it is just life. And it feels like what we've walked through the last 2 years with COVID, there's been more of that. I don't know about y'all, but there's
No.
been plenty of hard days, it feels
Oh,
like.
I think it has definitely shown a light on how dysfunctional families can be. That's for sure. So you can encounter those kinds of stressors in a traditional family that has some dysfunction, that
Mhm.
doesn't communicate well and doesn't necessarily voice expectations, and then unvoiced expectations are almost always unmet.
Right,
And I think
right.
kind of lowering those expectations and then not being afraid to voice them, and again,
Yeah.
but like you said, kind of finding a safe space or safe person to be able to communicate that to.
Or have
It's taken us
unrealistic
years.
expectations too. Some
Yeah.
expectations really are unrealistic, and I think we need to take a, a,
Mhm.
a concerted effort to say, okay, is this reasonable to expect this person to
Right,
behave or do or whatever? So yeah.
Right.
right.
Am I watching Hallmark movies and believing that that's what's gonna happen? I mean,
No. No
we
to
No,
Hallmark.
yeah. No, I
No.
will say we did watch a couple of sweet, sappy ones on Netflix. There was a sweet one this year about that Brooke Shields was in, and Carrie Elwes from The Princess Bride, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love those actors. So it was cute.
Lori,
I
because I
don't
have so
normally do
much
Hallmark movies.
respect for you, I am not going to say anything, okay?
No, it wasn't okay. It wasn't a Hallmark movie, but it was kind of like a Hallmark movie. But
Okay.
I'll leave it at that. It was cute.
Yeah. Well, I think, Cheryl, that you're absolutely right. We can have unrealistic expectations, and so we do have to kinda take it down a notch and realize that things may not go exactly like we want. I love the slogan, "Progress, not perfection." I think that in a blended family, we're looking for progress in our relationships. We'll never make it to perfect, and that's okay. You don't make it to perfect even in biological families, but we do want progress. It may be that at times we take just one small step forward and we
Mhm.
take 3 steps backward. That is still progress in blended families.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
Well,
we capture those, we celebrate those, and we realize that soon we'll be taking 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards if we
right.
continue to persevere and to keep working on our relationships.
Yeah, well, and we say blended family. We call it blended families all the time, and it's not. If you put everybody together in a blender, you're just going to chop people up, and there's
Right.
sharp blades, and people are going to get hurt. It is that whole idea of people have to kind of simmer together, and it takes years
It
to
does.
truly
Mhm.
Absolutely.
integrate a family into a functional step family where you really feel well bonded, and it can be the average is 5 to 7 years, and for some people it's a little shorter. When the kid If you come together when kids are younger, it can be a shorter amount of time. If the kids are older, it could be, if they're out of the house, it could feel a shorter amount of time. But in reality, when you're looking at kids that are in their tweens and teens years, it's tricky and it's difficult. And as Ron Deal says, somebody's always the carrot in your crock pot that takes the longest to cook and
Mhm.
takes the
Yeah.
longest to soften. And
And
it just
sometimes well, and sometimes too, relationships begin to move forward, and then you
Mhm.
move into those teenage years, and
Yes,
they may feel like you really begin to take some steps backwards. But
Absolutely.
it's so
Absolutely.
crazy. We had a conversation in our home just 2 nights ago between one of my daughters and my husband, he's her stepdad, of a story that had us all in tears at the time. She was a teenager, and she was my really hard child to raise, and Randy was at his wit's end with her one night and ended up putting her in the car and saying, "We're going to the police station because I've got to have some help here." And it was amazing how the policeman came out and gave instructions to my daughter also. But what's so funny is we had such a good time laughing about this 2 nights ago because, for one, my daughter knows how hard she was to raise, and she knows the grief that she caused her stepdad, but we can laugh about that now. And so there are stories that I think
mm,
we're going to cry about when they happen, but we also know that that's part of how we build identity in our family, and
mhm,
how we build relationships, and form loving relationships. But sometimes it does take longer than we want. So, as we stay on the theme of holidays and Christmas, that's mainly what we're talking about here. Is I'm wondering if y'all have just a favorite memory of a Christmas with your family. It's maybe it's something with one of the kids, maybe it's something as a mom or a stepmom that you can just recall really just meant a lot to you or helped you form opinions about things in regards to your blended family. Just wonder what kind of thoughts you have
mhm,
on that.
I think the first year that we did volunteer together, we've done the angel tree for many years as well. But that always felt like
mhm,
Jonathan and I going to the tree and picking the name, and then maybe going
Hmm.
shopping together. But still, it was very led by myself and
mhm,
Jonathan. First year we volunteered as a family, and we chose the place together. That was so memorable to me, again, because the children were involved and
Mm,
they wanted to be a part of it. And we came back to the house. They were feeling exceptionally good about themselves, about having given themselves over to people who couldn't help themselves.
right.
And we just laughed and we had such an awesome time. And it was a solidifying moment for our family. It was one of those moments that it's like, oh my goodness, we're family, and we enjoy one another, and we argue together, and we come back together, and we do all the things that families do, including work side by side to help someone else. That was really
Yeah.
special for me.
Yeah. That is special. And again, those are things that your kids are going to remember, far more than what gifts they got. So, yeah, that's
I don't know. There
awesome.
were some gifts that were pretty good, Gayla. So I don't
hopefully you'll remember those.
know. Yeah.
I'm
That's
sure
so
you're
cool.
right.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's see. For me, I guess one of my favorite memories of how we celebrated Christmas, this actually, again, it wasn't on Christmas, it was after Christmas because of how the holidays fell. And I believe, so my two kids had gone to see um, their dad in Seattle, and then we're going to be flying back to Dallas. And what we did instead was we picked up Kirk's kids and we got on the road and we drove to Denver to my stepbrother's house. He and I are close. They're also a blended family. And we all met up in Denver and had Christmas together, really over New Year's with my stepbrother and his family. And my kids flew from Seattle to Denver, and we drove from Dallas to Denver, and we all gathered together there. So it was just a really special memory of being able to, make the best of a situation where we didn't actually physically have everybody on Christmas Day, but
Right.
we still got to celebrate, and we did stockings for everybody, and we even did pajamas for my brother and his wife, and it was it was a great celebration. It was
Yeah.
fun to travel, and just it was perfect.
Yeah. I think about times that we have invited others over for our Christmas dinner who were less fortunate than our family, and we knew that they didn't have a place to go and invited them to join us. And I think that's helpful for our kids to see that we want to reach out to others. These were people who we knew from the church. They weren't perfect strangers, but they were people who we knew were just down on their luck, and it was helpful for all of us to experience that together as a family. But a memory that I have with my blended family that really helped reframe my thinking about something was the year after my kids lost their mom. So my husband and I had been married about 8 years, and their mom passed away of cancer. And it was a very hard dynamic. They were 14 and 19. Even though she had been sick a year, her passing was quicker than any of us anticipated. And so you naturally know that the holidays are going to be hard. And I was prepared for that first set of holidays. I was all on board of trying to help my stepkids in any way that I could. And I knew that they were going to be grieving. But what caught me off guard was the second year. The second year, we were decorating the Christmas tree, and I'll never forget this. My stepson just left, and he went to his room, he stomped up the stairs, and it made me really sad. And yet I had to step back and think, well, but this isn't about us. He's still grieving. My goodness, it's only been 2 years. And what he sees at our home is that my kids still have a mom and he doesn't. And it
Mm.
really made me sit back and think about the road that our stepkids walk also. It's so easy to consider our needs and our wants and what's important to us and forget that these kids are walking a road also that includes variables that they don't have a say in. When my Randy and I married, my girls got two stepkids. They got a stepdad. They didn't have a say in that. And yet we expect them to just accept it. And we're happy about remarriage, and we're happy about celebrating holidays again as a family unit. And yet our kids may not be quite ready for that. And it is true that our kids are not at the same place emotionally as we are. It takes them a few years to catch up with us. Generally, when we remarry, we're excited about it. But for them, it's another loss. And that's what they're dealing with, because now it solidifies the fact that parents are never going to get back together. And it just naturally feels like another loss. So that is a Christmas that will be embedded in my memory forever, to just remind me, not just because of the loss they had experienced, but also just whatever road they're walking on. We forget how hard it is to be a teenager these
Mm.
days, y'all. I mean, the things these teenagers deal with and these young adults, and man, those are hard, hard variables. And so I think it's helpful for us to always sit back and remember that we want to minister to them of whatever their needs are at the time, and just recognize it's not all about us. Yes, we have needs and we can voice our needs, but we've got to balance that also with the other needs of our family.
And I
Gayla, if
think
we could hold compassion and empathy
Right,
in our families, that will go a long way towards creating an atmosphere in which we can bond, in which we
right,
can help navigate through these tough moments.
right, right.
Mhm.
So there's another chat that's come in asking about tips for adult stepchildren. That's a great one.
Yeah. I was going to suggest that, what you're describing, Gayla, like, it's carrying that through as our kids get older. Like it does get harder to get them together, and they start to get their own lives, or they have boyfriends or girlfriends and they want to spend time with them and those
Right,
families. So your
right,
blended family becomes that much more complex as your kids get older. Or maybe, if you've married and your kids are already grown and out of the house, then sometimes it's harder to pull them in and to blend, because they don't have a whole lot of interest in necessarily, they don't see your family as their family unit at
Right.
all, because
Right.
they didn't necessarily grow up with those
Right.
step parents.
Mhm.
So I think, maybe celebrating in a way that isn't necessarily about the holidays, but just
Mhm.
trying to think of it as more like a little family reunion, or a get together, get to know each other.
Mhm.
Maybe doing that on some neutral territory. Um, you could, there's plenty of places on VRBO and Airbnb that you could get big cabins where maybe you can all get together, and or people have separate spaces to be able to retreat to. But almost thinking of it like a family reunion, and maybe it has to be a little separate from the holidays, just for logistics. It's hard sometimes to get.
Right.
I think that's
I-
true even in nuclear families. It's hard to get adult kids together. So
It,
you have the
it is.
complexity of a step family where they don't necessarily want to spend all that time together. It,
Right.
it
And
can be tricky.
yeah, the other thing I would say too in regards to adult kids is we want to watch their clues. We want to make
Mhm.
sure that we are careful that we don't push a relationship if they're not
Yeah,
ready for it,
yeah.
that we gently let them know that we do want a relationship with them, but we're
Mhm.
not going to push it. And so
Right.
maybe it looks like a text on a day that we know they have something going on. Or maybe it's just, hey, I'm shopping for Christmas. Do you have any ideas you want to give me for Christmas
Mhm.
gifts? But we just want to be really careful that with adult kids, that we don't push too hard because we can push them away. And
Mhm.
we've got to be patient to let those relationships simmer for a while
Right.
they try to decide if they like us, if they can trust us, if they want us in their lives,
Mhm.
and just be patient with that process.
And I
I
think
also think that the goal with adult children too is not so much a step parent stepchild relationship as it is a friendship.
It is.
So what you're going after is just creating opportunity for friendship to bond. And on a lighter note, listen, adult children is when you get to pass the torch.
I know.
So, right. So this is when you get to start going to their homes and say, hey, I just came to get a plate. How you doing today? Like you do not have to host Thanksgiving or Christmas at all.
Right.
Just go plate to plate, house to house. There you go. You got a movable feast
Yeah.
already
Oh,
made for you.
right. Or if you do host, you can ask, what dish are you
What
bringing?
dish are you
Hey, this is
bringing?
what I need. Can you help me?
That's
I
right.
mean, that's
Absolutely.
what I did this year and it worked wonders.
Nice,
Absolutely.
nice. I was
Yeah.
going to piggyback on that and say, like, I think making yourself available is one of the key pieces. Lowering your expectations for what that relationship or friendship is going to look like with adult stepkids, but then also, like, they're adults. Like, I think it's
Mhm.
okay to
Mhm.
try to open a conversation, start a dialogue, and be like, hey, have you thought about, would you like to get together?
Right.
Because I think,
Right.
if you can maintain um, the, we're all adults here, I guess, basically is the point, and try to have those conversations and be like, ideally, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Whatever it is you say, I want you to feel comfortable telling me how you feel and what you'd like to do and what you don't want to do.
Mhm.
It might hurt a little bit to be like, if they're like, yeah, I don't really want to spend the holidays with you. I can't say that that's not going to sting,
Of
but
course.
at the same
Mhm.
time, like, you're asking for them to be honest, and you've got to be able to accept what it is they say, and I think it's okay, because I think that ultimately they'll respect you more if you're like, hey, I want your opinion, I value your opinion, and
Mhm.
that will pay off over time.
Mhm. Yeah, and the other thing to think about too is it's okay to let these kids have one-on-one time with their biological parent.
Oh, for
We
sure.
do not have to feel like we have to be in the picture all the time as a
Mhm,
step parent. They still need that one-on-one time with
mhm.
their biological parent. And so we want to give that to them if at all possible and know that it will serve us in the long run as well. But just again, step back and think about the position of that stepchild and the loss and the transition that they're trying to go through as they adjust to a new family.
Yeah.
Cheryl, I was thinking you look like you might have had one more thing to add to that.
Well, I just actually, you kind of stepped into what I wanted to say is that we do need to give, and this is not just for adult stepchildren, may I say, with even younger children,
Mhm.
really honor the relationship that they have with their biological parent and
Right.
allow them time The younger they are, the more open they may be to spending one-on-one time with you as well. So
Mhm.
also offer that
Mhm.
as an opportunity. Do you want to? What do you like to do? Let's go and do that. And another thing that to piggyback off what you said, Lori, we have our youngest is 24 now, and we didn't know if we were going to see him this Thanksgiving. He was thinking about going to the football game, but I want to spend some time with you. I'm going to come. So again, he's my bonus son, uh, but they're all adults. The oldest is 38 now. The youngest is 24, and they have their own lives and
Mhm.
grandchildren and what have you. And so we just have to remain again very, very flexible.
Right.
Very flexible.
Flexible is the key. And the other
Yes.
thing I want to say is, pictures are a big thing at Christmas. And many years I felt like if we didn't have all five kids together, what was the point of taking a picture? Well, you know what? It's pretty rare nowadays that we get all five kids together. It's really hard. Our kids live in four different states. And so we take a picture with whoever shows up at our holidays, at our vacation. And the other thing is, we don't wait to make sure that everybody can go on vacation together. We plan a trip and we ask if you want to join us. We'd love for you to join us. But the reality is, it's just not always possible, especially as they get older and adult kids that we're talking about. So continue to live life and live it in a way that feels acceptable to you, but don't wait until it's the perfect moment to get a picture or to take that vacation that you want to take, because it may never come.
Right.
So,
And I think to cut down on offense, though, it's okay to say, listen, we're going to take a picture this Thanksgiving. We know you're not going to be there, but we just want to let you know we're going to take this picture because somebody can feel a little left out or,
right,
so you want to mitigate negative emotions as much as you can. You can't control it, but as much
right.
as you can,
You can.
so, right.
And you
Yeah.
right, and if you can still have
Acknowledge.
pictures of everybody that are displayed in your home, I mean, obviously, that is ideal because you don't want to
Mhm.
I mean, kids live out of state. It's naturally harder for them to spend time and be there for holidays, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay,
We had all.
I'm gonna throw one out to y'all
Okay.
that, is gonna be a surprise here, and I wanna hear what you have to say, and it has to do with what's one thing that you wish you'd done differently for your holidays? This doesn't have to just be Christmas Day. This can be anything in the season. This can have anything to do with the holidays. What do you wish you had done differently? If you're talking to a young stepmom, what would you tell her?
I would tell her, listen, don't stress yourself out, honey. I decorated every single room in the house. I hosted the big party. I just did everything. I got all the gifts, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then rah, rah, everyone's going to be here and we're all going to be happy. And I just put so much pressure on myself and on
Yeah.
my family,
Mhm.
unnecessarily so.
Mhm.
Take it easy, in the busyness that surrounds this season. Just take opportunities to rest, to rejuvenate, and don't put so much pressure on yourself.
Yes,
Please do not.
right. I love that. Oh my goodness, I love that, Cheryl.
Yeah, that's great advice. What I was going to say is something similar. I wish that we'd had a little bit more time to just stop and enjoy.
Mm,
And whether that's, time for the kids to take a deep breath in the middle of opening all the presents or just stop and play for a while and not just be like, okay, every minute is scheduled out and we've got to get the X, Y, and Z done in this period of time. And then we're going to go do this and that. I just wish we slowed down a little bit
mhm.
to
Yeah.
just, whether they want time together or want time on their own, just allowing, everyone has a different pace.
Mhm.
What works for one kid doesn't work for another. And I think when, we first came together, we were trying to make one thing work for everybody. And we were, just doing the best we could.
Right.
And our hearts were in the right place,
Mhm.
but it was hard, and
Mhm.
sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think mine's along the same lines. I wish I had offered grace to myself a little more often. I was too hard on myself. Just like you're saying, Cheryl, I wanted everything to go well. I wanted the Christmases that I had as a child, but you know what? I was brought up in a biological home. And so our Christmases were never going to look like that. And yet it seemed like I kept striving for that until I finally realized this isn't the same. This isn't the same family. It doesn't mean that it's not okay that we don't have the same kind of Christmases. We can make them good in a different way. And so take care of yourself. Um, Take time for those traditions, and also take time for special services, maybe your church services and things that you can go to as a family. Make sure that you take time for those also. Okay, guys, we're wrapping up. We have been given the 4-minute warning, which means that I want to just leave the ladies with a sense of hope, because it can be a time of feeling hopeless at times, or a time of feeling overwhelmed, and we just want to give them a little nugget of hope. And I'm curious what y'all would have to say in regards to that.
Lori, I'll let you jump in first if you'd like.
A nugget of hope. I would say, don't give up. I think that some years are easier than others, and every relationship with every child is different, whether that's bio or step. And to just be persistent, but in a kind way.
Yes.
And just, gosh, I feel like it's daily die to self to sometimes maintain those relationships.
Right.
But in the end, like it pays off.
It does pay off, and you do see rewards on the journey.
Yeah. So I was looking at some of the comments as they were coming in, and there are some
Yes.
ladies that are really struggling, some great ideas in there. Please read the comments if you have it. Some ladies that are really struggling. I just want to encourage you. This is my go-to. We don't have to do this alone.
Yes.
We are empowered by the Holy Spirit to thrive in this role that He's called us to, and we can lean on Him. We can ask Him to send us encouragement. We can ask Him for ideas. We can ask Him for space to rest. We can, and He supplies it so generously because our Father loves us. He wants, we are His beloved daughters, and he made our families for us and us for our families. They are gifts to us and we are gifts to them. So please know that you are not alone, and you're not on your own, and you don't have to do this in your own strength.
Right.
Yeah, and I would
Amen.
piggyback on that to just say, like, if you feel like you're alone, reach out to other women who are stepmoms or who are in blended families, and just share what's going on, and know that you're not alone in this physical world either.
Right.
That there are so many people who have walked similar roads to what you're walking, and you do not have to walk that alone in that sense either.
Right. Exactly.
There's so many resources out there, and Family Life Blended has got lots and lots of things available to help.
Yeah, you've seen it in the comments, how to sign up for our newsletter, how to
Yes.
join in on our podcast. There's a podcast for almost every subject in your blended family, and we would love for you to check out those podcasts and what could minister to you. And one of the things that I feel the Lord is really teaching me lately is there's purpose in our pain. We may not understand it, we may not like it, but there is a purpose in it. And sometimes we don't see that purpose until we're looking back. And yet, in those moments, we can still trust God. We serve a good God. Our circumstances may not feel good, they may not be good, and yet we can trust God. And His ways are higher than our ways. And when we stop trying to understand them and yet just trust that He will walk with us, then we find peace and we find joy for the holidays. And so that is my challenge to you, ladies, is just as we've said on this call, don't do this alone. Find friends, walk with the Lord, and know that you can have good days, bad days, and pick yourself up and keep going. So God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Look for us again in the spring. We will come back again in the spring. We will do another live stream, and follow our page and you will hear all about it. Thank you for joining us, and happy holidays. God bless you.